Welcome to the first ever episode of SUDA Gaiden. As the title implies, this is a series dedicated to tales of SUDA that are not naturally attached to one particular game. They act as side stories that give a better insight into the enigmatic developers, design philosophies, characterize why he's an important figure to pay attention to, and are mostly for pure entertainment by exploring bizarre moments in his very storied career. For the longest time, I've been doing a disservice to the legacy of SUDA by only touching moments tied to a game, or just by directly reading points of interest that I found on suda51.wikia.com without providing any original insight of his work from my own perspective. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I've kind of downloaded the entire thing into my iJack hole. And from now on, I will keep all the juicy little tidbits about SUDA51 to myself. Because honestly, who cares that SUDA51 had worked on the Subspace Emissary for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and to this day no one is quite sure what he did on it. Sorry for bringing it up. Today, we find ourselves as a fly on the wall in a chance conversation between three game developers in very different moments in their respective careers. Back in 2007, Grasshopper Manufacturer hosted an event to bring many prolific game developers together to have a little party and host panels about making games. This event was titled Snake vs. Zombie, in honor of the night's two special guests, Shinji Mikami, the father of Resident Evil, and Hideo Kojima, aka Metal Gear Daddy. The event also brought together the likes of Hifumi Kono from the Clock Tower series, Keiichiro Toyama, the creator of Siren and Silent Hill 1, and Fumito Ueda, the creator of Shadow of the Colossus, just showed up. What a guest list! Oh, by the way, this was just put together by some nobody debuting his lightsaber jack-off game that evening.
僕はですね、当時やっぱりヒューマンという会社にいたんですけれども、今日ゲストにいた河野君とですね、このバイオとメタルギアをやりながらもう悔しくて、もうなんでこんないいゲームが作れるのかで、なんでヒューマンはこんな予算がないのかっていうのを嘆きながらですね、もうその小島さんがインタビューで三上さんがインタビューでるのを見ても2人でですね、いつかこの2人を超えてやろうみたいな感じですね。で、2人にお会いやっとできたっていう感じで、やっと今日この場にですね、たどり着いたっていうのが。
In 2007, the time of the event, SUDA had never had a mainstream hit to his name, and he barely broke even on most of the games he produced. But here he was, hosting a shindig of legendary developers that were, by all accounts, far more successful than him in almost every regard. They had no reason to pay him any mind or go to his dumb party with a stupid name, but they all treated this event with respect. They saw something valuable in it, and some of whom saw potential in SUDA. Now you have to understand something about SUDA at this point in time in his career. His last prolific game release was back in 2005 with the release of Killer 7, which did achieve success in cult markets, and it wasn't necessarily the kind of game Capcom was looking for. In the Japanese game industry, having a hit on your hands was more of a curse than it was a blessing. To better contextualize my thought, let's take a look at the posture of these three gentlemen to see what it tells us about them and their time in the games industry. Seen some shit and tired of it, and the middle of the shit with no way out, eats the shit and hungry for more. At the time of Snake vs. Zombie, Mikami had left Resident Evil and Capcom behind him to open his own private development team called Straight Story, where he was having a gay old time working with Platinum Games to complete work on Vanquish. Kojima was smack dab in the middle of a seemingly endless line of Metal Gear sequels with no foreseeable end in sight. He was just so tired of making the series for Konami that it got to the point where he had to make a public statement to emphasize that Metal Gear Solid 4 was gonna be his last Metal Gear Solid game. Again, as he wished for freedom to pursue other projects. But we all know how that one turned out. Meanwhile, SUDA's throwing a party and showing off his Wii title with an otaku assassin protagonist that everyone secretly knew was designated for the bargain bin.
で小島監督から須田さんはどうでしょうか。
まだあんまりそうですね、まだお仕事はそこまでがっつりは。
とかいいですよね。
そうですか。僕、いや、売れる気満々ですよ。今日もだってこのスネークマサゾンビはやっぱりいつかやっぱ僕が売れるためにですね、お二人の力をいただきたい。ためのイベントですから。ね、売る気満々ですよ。
魂胆ですからね。
But SUDA didn't care. He just wanted to talk about the process of making games with other developers to hopefully learn something valuable in hopes of inspiring a new generation of developers to come. That's just the nature of SUDA. He's never been one to play it safe. He was in the business of originality and was catching the envy of many developers working for in-house corporate studios with no bathroom breaks or family visits allowed. This conundrum was unfair. Kojima and Mikami had a legacy of games that broke the proverbial mold and turned massive profits for their respective companies. But at the end of the day, they still had rings to kiss and were becoming victims to their own creations. And here was swinging dick boy SUDA making fresh new IPs, wearing cool clothes, hosting an underground straight-to-DVD show, not at the beck and call of faceless CEOs building toilet paper mountains in the sky. Perhaps at one point in time, Mikami and Kojima were the rebellious punks in the industry wearing all the cool clothes. Maybe back then they were afforded the environment of freedom to create without the restraints put into place by their respective companies. If you think about it, both Resident Evil and Metal Gear were at one point fresh and wild new IPs that were radical, never had been done before kind of games. Both alike in their genre-defying nature. For a while, their companies seemed to be receptive to new ideas and allowed for some additional IPs to come to term. But sometime in the late 2000s, this was put to an end, and the new IPs stopped coming, and it was back to the diamond mines for our boys. Back to the diamond mines, Kojima. Take a look at Mikami at his peak. In many ways, Mikami was undergoing a second renaissance in his time with Capcom just before he left.
Beautiful Joe and Killer 7 are coming along smoothly. They are so original, they will blow your mind. And one more thing, Resident Evil 4 will be scary than ever before. Don't pee your pants.
He had a financial hit on his hands with the release of Resident Evil 4. At that point, he was on top. He became their golden boy, or goose, depending on how you look at it. But there was one moment that signaled Mikami's exit from the big C. It was when Resident Evil 4 was ported to the PlayStation 2. Why does that matter? Resident Evil 4 is exclusive to the GameCube. I will cut off my own head if it ever comes out on another platform. Cucked by Capcom, a developer's story. Mikami saw the writing on the wall, but undergoing some form of Stockholm Syndrome decided to stay with them. Probably under the presumption that they wouldn't do something like that again, surely. Shinji apologized on Capcom's behalf and made a bold move to stop directing Resident Evil projects and focus more on new games. He went on to form Clover Studios with the intention of making wholly original IPs with the likes of Friendly Man, Hideki Kamiya. Personally, I find God Hand to be one of the best games of the PS2 generation, but to Capcom, it wasn't bringing in enough money like Resident Evil 4 was. So when Clover Studios failed to create multi-million seller titles, Capcom decided to make a move to fold Clover back into their main studios. Mikami was like, peace out. And Kamiya was like, fuck Capcom, I keeps it real, blocked.
There's a lot of different games that I want to make, and I'd really love it if I could make all kinds of different small games, but everyone thinks that, everyone wants me to make big hit games, and the people expecting me to make certain kinds of big hit games can get a little bit tiresome, and I get bored easily.
Mikami knew the importance of originality. In a manner of speaking, it was paramount to the essence of his Capcom 5 project. He knew about the importance of planting new seeds for the future of the industry. He knew that not every one of those seeds would grow up to be a money tree, but some would produce unique fruits that had never been tasted before. He predicted that without new ideas, this industry would stagnate and bring forward a whole line of formulaic games that would capitalize on nostalgia and trend following instead of contributing to the medium as a standalone experience to be enjoyed as a product of pure originality. Well, it's a good thing Mikami was wrong, right? Right. Where were we again? Oh yeah, likes it both ways, Snake only, invented new ways of doing it that won't be appreciated for about 5 years. You can tell at this point Kojima is totally disenfranchised by his current predicament and that he longed for the freedom that SUDA had. He wanted to take risks. He wanted to be allowed to fail. The only time Kojima perks up in this whole panel is when he shares this story about this one time on Metal Gear Solid 2, back when things were still fresh and exciting. Kojima revealed that he spent a whole lot of money getting a scene in Metal Gear Solid 2 where a guard pisses on Raiden to work, and he had further plans to build on top of that idea where the guard would, instead of pissing on Raiden, would shit on him instead. SUDA is fully on the edge of his chair during this story, and so am I. Kojima was let down by his team because he found out his developers went behind his back and put a farting noise in place of the shit. I may be reading too far into this situation, but the whole poop fart switcheroo was like a metaphor for the rest of his career at Konami.
Stop right there! No! Get back here!
Kojima was like a wealthy princess trapped in a Rapunzel tower of farts, looking down at SUDA and friends, having poop fights, thinking to himself, man, that sure looks like fun. In retrospect, the last not Metal Gear game Kojima was allowed to work on during his time with Konami was PT. But he wasn't actually allowed to work on that and had to develop it in secret, so I don't think that counts. After the Snake vs. Zombie event, SUDA and Kojima announced Project S. Project S would be a collaborative effort between the two that was based in the world of Snatcher. What was Project S? Was it supposed to be a new Snatcher game? Was it a remake for the Wii? The world wouldn't find out until 4 years later in 2011.